Hello and welcome to this live webinar from Proposals for NGOs about the sustainability plan in a project proposal. I'm really excited to do this this live webinar about this very important topic. It's very close to my heart, so yeah, I'm really happy that you all joined us to learn more about this part of the proposal. My name is Eva, I'm from Germany. And I've just recently finished my PhD in exactly this field. My PhD was called Transition to Sustainability and was about methodologies in development cooperation in projects in Nepal. So I've done a lot of research about the issue of sustainability and the issues connected, and I'm here today to share my knowledge with you. I work for Proposals for NGOs. You probably all know the page, otherwise you wouldn't have found this video. Proposals for NGOs is the leading website to get information about proposal writing for grassroots and small NGOs. So on our website we teach you everything from how to write a proposal, how to find potential donors, what to include there, what are the parts of the proposal, and how you can be more successful. So yeah, I really recommend you go back to our page after this and check out some of our articles. We've also recently started an online school where we have online courses and teach even more about the issues of fundraising, but I will be talking about that a little bit later. Yeah, so today I will be talking about project sustainability, sustainability in general, and just explain a couple of the very important things to you that are different to the concept of sustainability that you probably normally know, and things that you have to keep in mind when you fill out that section of the project proposal. So we have this is live, so you can ask any questions. If there's any issues, if there's problems with the audio, etc., please just let me know and I will try to fix it as soon as I can. And if you have questions about the topics, you can just type them in. Our team is also in the comment section, so if you have a specific question that they can answer while I'm still in my presentation, they will post a link, they will let you know. Otherwise, just make sure that I can see your questions at the end, because we will have a designated time for questions. But again, if it's something important you want to shout out in between, just do so. I can't promise you that I can see everything while I'm in my presentation, because the screen is set up a little bit different. But once I finish my presentation, we will have time for questions, and then I will also be able to see the full comment section. And like I said, our team is going to be active in the comments as well. So if you have a simple issue, if you need a link, or if there's any technical stuff, you can always just post in the comment section and they will get to you right away. Okay, so I think we can just get started. Let me set up my presentation. One second, sorry. Okay. So today we will talk about the sustainability plan and how to score with donors. You probably have seen this section, the sustainability plan, at the bottom of the proposal when you have to fill out a form, or when the donor gives very detailed guidelines about what to include in a project proposal. The sustainability plan or the sustainability section is normally at the bottom. It's one of the last sections that is included there. And we have noticed with many proposals that get sent to us, or that we read, or that we evaluate, that there's not enough attention put on this section of the proposal. Because it is very important, but many NGOs still treat it as an afterthought, because when you plan a project, you put a lot of emphasis on the activities, on the rationale, etc. And then in the end you realize, oh, I don't have space left, I don't have words left, and I don't have time left to actually fill out this section of the proposal. So then it just gets a couple of sentences that are not well thought out. And that can become an issue very quickly. That's why we have decided to address this topic in a live in a live webinar today because we feel like it is very important that you clearly understand how you can tackle this and how you can use this section to actually differentiate your proposal from the pile of the other proposals that get sent to a donor. Because you always have to think about what can make your proposal special. Even if you have a perfect project and if your ideas were very good, you still have to distinguish yourself from the other proposals, from the other projects, because they also all might be good. So you really have to find out what is that special thing about your proposal. And the sustainability section is one section where you can still really make points, because like I said, we see many NGOs don't put enough emphasis on it. And if you do, then there is something that will set you apart. Yeah, so to start, today we will talk about what the definition of sustainability. What is sustainability? It's a word that everybody's using currently. So everybody's talking about sustainability. You hear it on the news all the time. But what is it actually? Do you know the definition and do you know how to use the concept? Then we will talk about project sustainability, because that's a difference. Sustainability in general doesn't mean necessarily project sustainability. But when donors ask for the sustainability plan, they normally want to know about the project sustainability. So that's also a mistake many NGOs make, because they don't have their definitions clear. So this is something we will talk about. Then we will brush how you can achieve project sustainability, because of course that's the question you all have. It's not going to be easy to answer this in a short webinar. So we will just touch on this, but we will give you some inspiration, some ideas on how you can tackle this issue and how you can include it and how you can work on your own ideas. And like I said, in the end, we have time for questions. So please stay with us until the end to get a chance to put your questions in and have me answer them directly. So I would say I would just jump right in with a definition. So what is sustainability? Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This is the classical definition that you've probably all heard and read from the Brundtland Report from 1987. This is when this term was first really coined and is when people started using it. So this idea of trying to save resources so that people who come after us can still use them and we're not using them up. So we are just using the amount of resources that can renew themselves, and we're not using something that cannot be renewed again. So this idea became more and more important as it became more clear that there are environmental problems that were caused by our way of living and our way of consuming, basically. So this is geared towards environmental sustainability. In the concept of sustainability, there's other pillars as well. We're talking about the 3 or 4 pillars of sustainability, which are the environment, the economy, the social, and the cultural pillar. So there's different dimensions, but it basically all refers to this concept of sustainable use of resources, sustainable living on the planet, to make it possible and desirable for future generations to still live on this planet, and how we can manage a way of living where we don't destroy the planet for the people who come after us. This is a very important concept to understand, and this is when people talk about sustainability on the news, when you ask about sustainability indicators, stuff like that, it's mostly talking about this aspect of sustainability. And the aspect that is stressed most is normally the environmental sustainability, really just focusing on the environment. How can you make your impact smaller? How can you make sure that your impact is not bigger than the benefit that comes from your project, from your life, from your actions, whatever. What you have to understand, though, is that environmental sustainability, this kind of sustainability that we just talked about now, is not the same that the donors are referring to normally when they ask you to fill out the sustainability section. Of course, donors always want to know about your environmental sustainability. No donor today will fund a coal mine or something like that, that is clearly against everything that we know today on how to treat the environment. It is something that is very important that you look out. What is the environmental impact of your project? Did you take environmental concerns, sustainability concerns into consideration when you planned your project? And it can be critical. I've had several instances where we didn't get funding because the donor thought we were not using the resources in the perfect way. So it is important that you put attention on that and think about it, but it's not necessarily what the donor wants to read when they ask you about your project sustainability. So you kind of have to keep that separate in your mind. It is very important that you understand the environmental impact of your project, that you know what the side effects can be, will be, what will happen down the road. But many times you can address that in a different section. You can address that in the project description, or just find a different section altogether. When the donor asks you about your project sustainability, they want to know how you will sustain your project, the project itself in the long term. How will it work in the long term? Will it be still there in the future, etc.? So in this section, you don't talk too much about the environmental sustainability, but you talk about how to sustain your own project and how you've incorporated this in your proposal. So just keep this differentiation in mind, because it is very important that you understand that those two things are not the same. So talking about project sustainability, I found this nice quote from Cheryl Clark. If your proposal is a story, think of the sustainability plan as the sequel of the story. So if you're trying to tell a story, then you can imagine the first part of the story is finished when you finish your proposal, but the sustainability plan looks into the future. So the sustainability plan explains how the story will continue and what you can do to make sure that the story continues. What is your contribution to the future of your project, of your story? So I thought this was a really nice quote to understand what project sustainability is about and why you need it and why you have to think so much about it. If you talk about the future, and this is also encapsulated a little bit in this quote, I would say, of course, you will not have real good data for the future. You will have some assumptions and you will have some ideas, but it's going to be descriptive because it's far in the future. Even if you have some predictions about how your project will end, the sustainability plan is even farther into the future because you're talking about what will happen after your project that you're proposing right now will end. So it's even further into the future. So it's going to be descriptive. It's not going to be something put in stone, but it's a section where you can say, where you can show that you actually can think into the future and that you have taken all these things into consideration. And that you are there, that you try to be there for the long term, and that you are trying to think into the future with a lot of confidence. For me, it's also always important to understand why the donor wants to see a specific section in the proposal, because once you understand that, you also understand much better how to frame it and what to put in there and which information could be helpful for your cause. So why is the sustainability plan so important for donors? The most important thing is, I would say, that they want to see that their investment is going to be successful in the long term. We've talked about this a lot in last webinars as well. Sometimes NGOs approach donors a lot like cash cows. They think, oh, they're just going to give me money and we do the project and then it's finished. Donors, normally, they're not looking just for organizations to give money to. They're looking for investments, they're looking for partnerships, because they do want to work in the long term. They have the same vision, they have the same mission that you do. They do want to influence change in the future, and they can only do that if they invest their money in a very smart way. So of course they are trying to find the best project to give their money to make their investment with. And one way to find the best project is to have a project that is already thinking about its future, that can sustain itself in the future, and is set up in a way that is rooted deeply in the community, and that will carry itself. So that will make it much easier for the donor to make a decision. So they're looking for partners, they're looking for partnerships. And to form a good partnership, you need consistency, you need reliability. And all these things can only be there if an organization and if a project is going to be there in the long term, if it's not just a short fire that burns bright but is gone then, but if it's something sustained that will be there as a reliable partner in the future. So that is what donors are looking for. So, of course, they want to see if their investment is going to be successful in the long term. This also refers to the last point here. They have to justify their decision to their board. Donor agencies, of course, for an NGO, a donor agency looks like they can do whatever they want. They can make their own decisions. But a donor agency is also responsible towards their donors. If it's a government agency, they have to present their reports with the agency that they get their money from. If they have their own donors, they have to give a report. They have their board of trustees, etc. So they have to kind of justify their decision towards their donors. And if you have a very good sustainability plan, and if you can show that your project will just need this first push, or that you have a good plan of how the project will sustain itself in the future, it's going to be so much easier for them to justify that decision, because this money spent in a project that will be able to sustain itself and won't need much more support in the future, and has a good plan of how to implement the steps and activities in the future, is going to be money well spent, because then the return on investment will be much higher than if you just plan for today and maybe tomorrow, but not for next year, because in that case the project will probably end at some point, will not be sustained, and then the money invested will be gone and lost, and the effect or the impact that your project wanted to have will not be achieved. Like I said, it's very difficult to really determine the future, obviously, because it's in the sustainability plan you're really talking about the further future. So they will not pin you down on everything that you put on the sustainability section or plan, but it's a good indicator for donors to see if you're thinking into the future, and if you have fantasy, and if you have enough imagination to think and plan ahead into the future. So this is the section where you can show that. If you just put those 3 sentences that almost everybody puts there, which is we will apply for more grants, we will form a local NGO, and we will collect donations or something like that, that just shows that you don't have a lot of fantasy, and that you didn't put a lot of attention towards this section, and that you're not really thinking about the future of your project, that you're thinking in maybe one project cycle, but that's it. If you have something worked out for the sustainability section, the donor sees that you actually look at your project holistically, that you see your organization, yourself, rooted in the community, etc. So that is also something that counts towards the quality of your proposal, and is something that donors want to see. And it's a good indicator for other sections as well, because if you have a very well thought out sustainability section, that normally means that you also have a very well thought out proposal, because the one doesn't work without the other. So basically, the donors want to see if you are going to be a long-term partner, donors want to see if you're going to be around, and donors want to make a good investment because they want to see their money go to work. They want to see impact for their investment. And if your project is going to finish after a first grant, not going to be continued, etc., then that money is lost, and they want to avoid that. So these are the things you should keep in mind when you design your sustainability section, because that will help you to tailor it more towards what donors want to see in a sustainability plan. Like I said, when you have guidelines or just a form that you have to fill out in the sustainability section, normally you don't have to enter a complete sustainability plan. A sustainability plan can be bigger, it can be a couple of pages, and it talks in detail about all the things that go into that. You don't always have to give or have to present a full sustainability plan. I still think that it makes a lot of sense to think about it before and to write some things down, and to maybe even develop a sustainability plan for your project, for your organization, that takes into account the different aspects of project sustainability or work sustainability, because it will help your entire organization to be set up in a better way, and it will help the quality of your work. Many times you don't have to present all of that though. Still, when you talk about project sustainability in the sustainability plan, there are 3 parts of it, and those are very important, that you know that you have to address these 3 sections of project sustainability, and that they are equally important, because many times one gets much more emphasis than the others, and that is also an issue further down the line. So here you can see there's 3 parts of project sustainability, which is the community sustainability, the financial sustainability, and the organizational sustainability. And they all play together, and only if all of them are achieved, you will actually have project sustainability. So talking about those 3 sections, what is community sustainability? Community sustainability basically answers the questions, how will the project in the community continue once the support fades, and how well is your project based in the community. There's a lot of research about issues with projects that have not been based well in communities. So if an outside agency comes along and says, oh, you need more wells here, or you need to plant this crop, or we need a school here, or we need a hospital there, if those people don't really root their project in the community, if they don't really have a demand analysis, etc., and if they don't include people from the community in their planning and implementation, many times those projects fail, even if the idea behind it is good. But if people don't feel ownership of a project, even if it's a good project, the project will still fail. So maybe you've all heard these cases where people in developing countries where there's reforestation programs, and people were not included in the planning, and so nobody took care of the trees, where people just got some crops that they didn't know how to cook, and nobody explained that to them because the researchers didn't understand those problems. There's a huge body of research about the importance of community sustainability and community involvement, basically. And this is one of the main reasons why community involvement is so important, is that you cannot create a sustainable project if the community is not on board with what you're doing. If they don't feel like this is you are addressing their need, if they don't feel like you are supporting them, and if they don't feel like they were included, then you will have huge issues down the line sustaining your project. Because if your project is demand driven and the people from the community started it and they want to keep working, when you leave as a person, or maybe even as an organization, they will make sure that the project continues. But if they felt like from the get-go that this was something that came from the outside and it doesn't make a lot of sense and it's not rooted in the community, then it will just stop working. So this is something that you have to keep in mind and think about a lot. How do you want to include the community in your planning and implementation process? How do you want to work with the community? How do you make sure that your project is demand driven and people feel ownership for the project and feel like it's their own? and feel like it's their place to be, and their project to implement. There's a couple of things. There's some methodologies you can use to do that. There's things like farmers' field schools or different participatory approaches to include more people in collecting of information, finding out what an actual demand is, etc. There's a lot of research about that. We also have many articles on our page, proposals4ngos.com, about this. So it's very interesting to look into. But this is also something where you already see the difficulty of the sustainability section, because now we're talking about community sustainability and how important it is. But you would realize you cannot just put something into the sustainability section if it's not thoroughly reflected throughout your proposal. That is why we always recommend to do the sustainability section first, to look at it at the very beginning, because you will realize if you really want to implement these things, if you are serious about your sustainability plan, it will influence your activities, it will influence the strategies you will use, it will influence the projected outcome of your project. Because if you want to achieve community sustainability, you have to include people from the very beginning. Maybe your project will change if you include community members and they tell you, oh, we need this or we need that. Maybe your project will change, your strategies will change, etc. So this is a step that will be reflected deeply throughout your proposal. So it's important to have this idea of what you want to do before you start writing the proposal, because otherwise either you will have a detached sustainability section that is not reflected in your proposal and looks like it's not based on reality, or you will have to make a lot of changes. So what I always recommend is to at least write down a couple of ideas about how you want to implement these things, especially aspects from community sustainability and financial sustainability, to make sure that you can include them in your activities and in your strategies, and that they are reflected realistically throughout your proposal. Otherwise, the donors will catch on very quickly that your sustainability section is not based on reality. Yeah, so these things are very important, that you think about how to include the community in your entire project process. The next part of sustainability, of project sustainability, that is important is the financial sustainability. And that is the thing that most people think of. When they fill out the sustainability section of the project proposal, most NGOs only put information about the financial sustainability. Of course, that is very important, because if you don't have financial sustainability, if you run out of money, you can't do anything. Of course, it is very important. But at the same time, it's not the only important thing, because even if you have endless funding, if the project is not rooted in the community at all, you will still have issues. If your organization itself is not stable, you will still have issues. So it shouldn't be the only thing you address. It is an important part, and it needs a good strategy. It needs to be on very strong feet, but it's not the only part you should talk about. So the financial sustainability basically addresses how will the project be funded once the grant runs out. So if you apply for a grant, how do you continue after that money is gone? And will there be any other sources of finance in the future? How do you want to continue the project? And again, these are things that will, if you develop good ideas, this will influence your proposal, your activities. For example, if one of your strategies could be to form a social enterprise for the participants of your project, then you will need to have that reflected in your activities, because if you want to form a social enterprise, that's nothing you just do at the end of your project from one day to the other and then it works. It's something that needs to be planned, needs to be included, etc. So you need to develop these ideas as early as possible. And then in that case, you can start working them into your proposal and having them being reflected nicely. And then the last part is the organizational sustainability. And that section answers the question, how will your organization be sustained? And are you there in the long term? And this refers back to what we talked about in the beginning, why the donor wants to see this. It's because they are looking for long-term partners. They are not just looking for a number of NGOs to pour money out on and then leave again. They're looking for partners. They're looking for long-term relationships with organizations because they do want to support those causes. They have the same mission. They have the same vision. They want to make sure that it works out for both sides. So they want you to be there in the long term, and they want to have a stable partner. And even though this sounds very simple and straightforward, it is something that you should think about, because there might be new costs, there might be things that you haven't thought about before, there might be issues paying your taxes, etc. This is something that you also need a concept for. Maybe this is not reflected so much in the project proposal as itself, because normally the organization runs on a different kind of budget. But still, it's something that you should have very clear, because if you have if you have a project that is perfectly rooted in the community and you have long-term funding for the project, but suddenly your organization stops existing because you can't pay your taxes or you can't pay specific bills, then you will have a problem. So you should have a plan for this in mind, and you should address it. It always depends on the space you have in the sustainability section, for into how much detail you want to go. But like I said, I think this is one of the sections where you can really show that you have a holistic understanding of your project, of your field of work. And if the donor gives you the space, if the donor gives you the opportunity to explain your ideas, I would tick them up on it and show in this section that you really know what you're doing and that you're thinking into the future, and that your work and your project is oriented towards the future, and not oriented towards only today. So how can you achieve project sustainability? Now we know what it is, why it is important, and what the different parts are, but how can you actually achieve it? And this is a question that is not easily answered. I just want to give you a couple of ideas that you can think of. It's something that you should try to work out in your team. Like I said, we always recommend to have a workshop, to have a day before you start writing any proposal, to think about these issues, because otherwise it's going to be difficult to have them reflected in the proposal. And everybody will have some input in this. Everybody might have different ideas, so that would be a good thing to have that all together. There's kind of two different kinds of projects that you need funding for, which is one is projects that you apply for and they are one-off, when you want to build a building, when you want to do an event, stuff like that have probably very low follow-up cost. In that case, it is easier because you don't have to constantly create more funding. But there's other projects that will always need constant money flow. Like if you run a school, you will always have to pay your teachers. You will always have to buy supplies for the kids. If you run a hospital, you will always have staff costs. You will always have other costs. There's just some projects that will never be able to completely fund themselves, and donors also know that. But they also want to see that you clearly understand these differences and that you do try to make them sustainable in the areas where it's possible, and have good ideas for other funding sources for the other areas. So like I said, concerning the community sustainability, we have many ideas on our page as well on proposals4ngos.com. So you should check them out. A couple of articles about participatory methods, how you can include people's opinions, how you can include people's knowledge into the planning of projects, and how you can include their input and ensure that they feel ownership. Forming local NGOs with their own ideas is a good thing. Just including people and making sure that their voices are heard is a good thing. For financial sustainability, if you can avoid it, I think it's never a good idea to just put, we will apply for another grant, because that sounds like you don't really have an idea of how the project can sustain itself. Of course, like I said, there are some projects that need this, but then you should explain it a little bit more. And then again, the more specific you can get, the better. So if you just say, we'll apply for a grant, that sounds like you thought 30 seconds about it. If you want to apply for another grant, you can do some research and say, we will apply with Foundation XYZ, because they tend to give follow-up funding after the pilot phase is done. And then the donor says, oh, you've already done the research, you really thought about it. Or you can try to contact people already and say, yeah, this foundation said they were interested, etc. So the more details you can give, the better. It's always good to try to think of things to generate money through the project. So for example, a social enterprise, selling something, running a restaurant, etc. All of these things can sometimes work, can sometimes be a good idea. Collecting donations, doing an event, selling stuff, all of this, you should brainstorm with your team, because everybody might have different ideas for this. And again, the more detail you can give, if the space allows it, the better, because then the donor will see that you really put in thought, and that you that you have good ideas that you want to implement there. For your organizational sustainability, it's the same. Normally, you would try to have more members, to have membership fees, try to get some stable donations, establish relationships with long-term donors, etc. It's not normally in a project proposal, you don't put that much emphasis on this part, but like I said, it is important that the donor sees that your organization is going to be there for the long term, and that you're going to be a long-term partner. I recommend you scroll through our page and look at some of the articles and ideas we have there. And I can also promise you that very soon we will launch an online course specifically about how to develop a project, the sustainability plan for a project proposal. And in this online course, we will also have a very detailed workbook that will help you to develop your sustainability plan. So just keep your eyes open for that, because I think that will be very helpful to actually support your organization in developing this plan. Okay, so we're coming slowly to the end of the presentation part of this webinar. So you've learned a lot about the sustainability plan now, about the concept of sustainability, how to make sure to reflect this throughout your proposal, and why it is important. But what are the next steps that you yourself can do or can take now? So I think one of the first things that you should do is make sure that everybody understands the importance of the sustainability plan. Because in many organizations we see, especially if teams work on proposals, that it's not always clear, and that creates or can create a lot of misunderstandings and issues. Update your strategy to include sustainability issues and a sustainability plan. Make sure that the things you decide, that your sustainability plan is reflected in your next proposal, because many times also you have organizations have some guidelines, have some ideas, but then it's not reflected properly. Make sure you don't treat the sustainability section as an afterthought. It is important, and you should actually think about it before you write anything else. That will save you a lot of work and make sure that the donor sees your real commitment to it. And be creative and think of ways your project can run in the long term. Don't just think in old structures. Don't just think in the same lines over and over again. This is a section where you can shine and where you can let the donors know that you are innovative, that you have new ideas, and that you can shine and think of your project in a holistic way, and that you thoroughly understand your area of work. Like I said before, on our page, proposals4ngos.com, we have a lot of material, but we've also launched our own online school last year. And we have many online courses there. Like I said, one of the next ones that we will publish will be about the sustainability plan. We have a course there that we're really proud of that is called The 5 Obstacles on Your Way to Fundraising Success and How to Overcome Them, because we worked with many, many small grassroots NGOs from all over the world, from Asia, Africa, Europe, from all over the place. And we see many issues that they face, and we see that sometimes with a little bit of guidance, they could be much more successful. So we have developed this very thorough course. It's a 5-module course over 5 weeks, where people can learn the entire fundraising cycle from the start to the end, or it's a cycle, so it doesn't have an end, but all the steps. Yeah, we've included all the things that we feel like are important to know and to understand, to know more about fundraising. So it's 5 modules covering all the important aspects of fundraising. In 5 videos with experts, we share the inside scoop. So we have experts that have two decades of experience in the fundraising field and have fundraised millions and millions of dollars, and they share their inside knowledge with you. We have more than 70 pages of supporting materials, cheat sheets where you can get everything important on one page, sample proposals and concept notes, templates that you can take and just need to fill out, and then you have your cover letter, then you have your project background, etc. We have quizzes at the end of each module, homework assignments that will help you to develop your strategy, to develop your own stuff. There's an exclusive Facebook group where you can discuss with peers, and we keep popping in and discussing stuff. I do Facebook Lives there frequently where people can ask me questions, so it's very interactive. And a copy of the ebook, The NGO Guide to Proposal Writing. So all of that is included in our 5 obstacle course. I really think it's amazing. We've gotten great feedback from our former students. They're all very happy and have implemented parts of our trainings, and they're running very well with it. So this is just a screenshot of one of the course videos from Eric Dettiger. He's one of our experts who's talking about donor research in this video. So he explains exactly how you can find donors, how you can organize them, how you can contact them, and how to just organize everything to become more successful. We have lectures, quizzes, downloads, text material, etc. that you can just go through on your own pace and read and reread whenever you need. So that's also the great thing with these online courses, is that they're not on a schedule, so you can just take them on your own schedule. When you have time, you just sit down, do an hour. When you're busy for 1 or 2 weeks, you just let it sit there and then go back to it after 2 weeks. So it's completely on your own schedule, and that's something I really like about our courses, because we know that you all have a very busy schedule, and that sometimes if there's a deadline pressing, then things can be very tight, but there's other times where you have more time, so it's completely self-directed. Here you can see some screenshots of the Facebook group, where we have very lively discussions about topics from the fundraising field. Sometimes people pop in and ask questions while they're writing a proposal. Sometimes the other members of the group answer, sometimes it's us. So it's very lively, and I think a great source of exchange. Like I said, the big course, the 5 obstacle course, is a 5-module course, so it's a 5-week course. The course consists of 5 modules. It starts with the fundraising strategy. Then we talk about donor research, donor networking, eligibility, and actually writing the proposal. And we've also seen that some people are interested in just one of those modules. They feel like, oh, I know how to connect with a donor, but I don't know how to find them, or I have issues with writing the proposal. So we have split up this course into 5 modules as well that you can purchase individually. So if you're just interested in one of those modules, you can also buy them individually. And like I said, we have many other courses. We have courses about fundraising from USAID, from European foundations, from the European Commission, in humanitarian situations, from Gulf donors, from corporations. It's the newest course that we have added. So we have a very interesting mix, and I recommend you click to our school. I'm sure we will post the link to our online school in the comments, and you can just click there and check out what we have to offer. Yeah, and the amazing thing is that because you've joined our webinar and you've stayed with us until now, today we were able to offer you all of our courses for 30% off. So if you go to the page and you see something that you like and you want to participate, for example, in the course about fundraising from corporations, in the 5-module course, or maybe in one of those modules, you just click on it, and before checkout you use the code PFN users, and with that coupon code you will get a 30% discount on that specific course. So I really recommend you go over and check out our program. I'm sure you will find something that is interesting for you. Because you took part in this training, I'm guessing that you're working on a proposal, that you're into it. So I really recommend the 5-module course because it gives you a great overview. It helps you with the strategy. It helps you with connecting with donors, with everything you need to know. Investing in your fundraising is something very important, and I hope that your organization understands the importance of this, because of course if you invest in a fundraiser and the fundraiser becomes more successful, there's no easier way to get your money back, but also it is skills that you will need throughout your career, and that will be great for you to have in the future. At the end of every course you will get a certificate, and we are also CFRE certified. So if you are striving for certification from them, you can also use points gained with our courses to get your certification from CFRE. Okay, so like I said, hop over, check out our program, use the code PFN users to get 30% off. And let me know how you like our courses. I'm really excited to see some of you as students with us. This offer is just valid for a week. So make sure you talk to your supervisors if needed, and yeah, take this opportunity because it's a great way to get inside knowledge about fundraising from experts with decades of experience. You're close to us. You can get into touch with us. And we will support you. We will offer up any support we can. And this is a great chance to enhance your knowledge and invest into your own future and into the future of your organization. So I hope to see many of you as students in our courses. If you sign up, hit me up and let me know. And my email is eva@proposalsforngos.com. So you can just shoot me an email if you have any questions, and I'm really excited to see you there. Okay, and with that, I'm done with the part with the PowerPoint presentation, and I will see if I can switch back to screen mode and see if there's any questions that you had. Okay, I'm here, and I can see the question section, but until now I think I don't see any questions. So now is the time. If you have any questions, you can just type them into the field at the bottom, and I will try my best to answer them. Of course, if you have a question about the sustainability plan itself, I'm happy to answer. But if you have a question about fundraising in general, if you want to know anything else, yeah, just let me know and I will also get to that. One question that we very frequently get is about how to find donors. So maybe I'll just talk about this for a little bit, because we also have online courses for that. We have a lot of information on our page as well, because of course it's one of the things that NGOs are worried about most. How do I find a good donor? How do I find someone who can potentially fund me? And there's many ways. We have There's a couple of databases where you can find donors. We will be launching one very soon as well. So make sure you subscribe to our newsletter and you stay tuned, because we will have this resource up very soon. You can just do a simple Google search and find people. You can check websites of like-minded organizations. That always makes a lot of sense. And just ask around. That is the thing that always surprises me the most, that many organizations don't use their own resources. They just try to sorry, I just got one of those questions. They just try to find information on the outside where they have a lot of information on the inside. So just trying to look at former staff, who has contacts, trying to use the board, asking for support and connecting with people can go a long way. So if you're looking for donors, the first step should always be to look who funded you before. Can they help you again? Do they have any information? Do your employees have any contacts? Can they maybe make a contact? Can they help you to connect with potential donors, etc.? So look into the inside, and then you can start looking for the outside. So if you can't work your own resources, then maybe you can use Google, use one of the databases, check with like-minded organizations, etc. Like I said, we have a full course on this that is very helpful. So again, I recommend you go and check that one out. Okay, so I still can't seem to read the questions in the roll, so I just have to check here. Priya Singh asks, I got a grant of $30,000 and the donor is asking how I will sustain my project further. How do I answer them? I think it's very difficult to just give you an answer now. So many of the things that we've talked about before make sense, I think. So you have to think about the kind of project that you run, the kind of follow-up cost that will occur. So of course, to be able to say, oh, I will sustain it in this or that way, you need to know how is the follow-up cost. What will be the follow-up cost? Is it something that you're building and then you have costs for staff, etc., or is it something is it something that has very, very low follow-up cost? Do you need insurance, etc.? So first determine the cost, the follow-up cost, and then you have to think of best ways. Sometimes it might make sense to try to include the government. For example, if you're running a hospital, if you're running a school, you can think about trying to ask the government for support, because they will be supposed to pay for the teachers, they will be supposed to pay for the hospital, even though I know that in many of the countries you're working in that's not the case. But at least you could try to make a connection. You can always say we will apply for other grants, but like I said before, then it would be important to be specific. Don't just say, oh, we'll get another grant, but say we've been in contact with Foundation XYZ and they were interested in supporting us. You can think about forming a social enterprise, selling something. If you do skill development, have people pay a small amount for the training, etc. There's many ways that you can actually do this. We have a very extended article about this on our page as well. It's very difficult to give you an answer without exactly knowing the project. But first step, I would determine what is the follow-up cost, in which time frame will it occur again, and then develop ideas with your entire team about how to tackle this follow-up cost and what to tell the donor. How can I get my board of directors to help me with the long-term sustainability? It's a question by Samir or Samir Lamtaro. That's a very good question as well, and that circles back to what I said before about trying to get everybody on board, because I think with these things as well, like with the strategy discussions and also with the sustainability plan, problem is many times that not everybody's on board. Sometimes it's other staff members who are not really agreeing. Sometimes it's people on the board. So if you have something like an annual meeting or something like that, you should bring these things up. And I think it is very important to develop a sustainability plan without the pressure necessarily of having to write a proposal right now, but just to have this plan, because then everybody's on board with it and everybody knows about the importance. There's a couple of things that board members, for example, can do to ensure long-term sustainability of the organization. For example, they can get tasks. They can be tasked with getting new memberships, getting maybe honorary memberships, or collecting one-time donations, long-term donations, of contacting their peers. Many times board members are maybe a little bit older, have their own networks, and using those networks to get donations to ensure long-term stability can work very well. It is important, though, that all these people are included in the planning, that they understand the importance, and that they understand why it is important that they get involved. And many times you will see that they have their own ideas and that they will develop their own strategies to attract donations, to attract members, etc. And then we have a question from Chibuzo James. How does one navigate obstacles in meeting the requirements from donors? That's a very broad question, and one that is difficult for me to answer as well. I would say if it always depends a little bit on the donor. If you have a small project, I always recommend to start with smaller donors that fund small-scale projects, because in that case, normally it's easy to get in contact with them and to find a way. If you can't fulfill all of their requirements, then they will probably have a little bit more of understanding why this is not possible and how you can adjust. If you apply for a grant with many with an open call where you know that they will receive thousands and thousands of applications, then it's going to be very difficult to navigate any leeway, because if they receive 1,000 applications and 500 are perfect, then they will not they will not have to listen to you if you ask them, I am having difficulties with this section. But if you start with smaller foundations that have smaller, very specific calls for your area, maybe you might have some more leeway to discuss things with them. Contacting people, trying to establish a personal connection, a personal contact is always good if you already feel like, I won't be able to fulfill all requirements perfectly, because then you have a personal connection and then you can ask things and you can approach donors in a little bit of a different way. But it always depends a little bit on the size of the project and size of the donor agency, and also luck sometimes, because sometimes your email gets read and sometimes it doesn't. So if you already know that it's going to be an issue for you to meet all the requirements, then I think you should try to look for a smaller donor who might not be as strict, and try to establish a personal connection where you can voice these concerns before you even write a proposal or before you try to answer to a call. I hope that answered your question a little bit. So I've been talking for an hour, so I think maybe we can come to an end as well. But I always really enjoy these live webinars. I'm really happy that you took part in this one. I hope you learned something. If you have any feedback, please leave us a comment. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you feel like this is helpful for you, please share our YouTube channel, share our page and our online school with your peers and your colleagues. We'll be very happy if you help us to get known more, because we really would like to support more NGOs with what we have to offer, either for free on our YouTube channel or in our online school. And make sure you subscribe to our newsletter as well, and stay with us so we can notify you for the next webinar that will happen. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon, either in one of our courses or in our next webinar. Thank you.